Welcome everyone to the King's Award for Voluntary Service webinar. I'm delighted that we have some special guests with us today. So I'm just going to give you some of the housekeeping for the webinar so you know what's happening. So as an attendee, you won't be able to see yourself on the screen because we are expecting over 100 people to join. So what you can do is you can't chat, but you can put your questions in the Q&A. And so if you bear with us, we will go through the various presentations. We'll tell you all about the awards, and then will be an opportunity for you to ask us any questions. The webinar should last for no longer than an hour, but it also gives you plenty of opportunity to ask questions and for us to answer. So we shall get started, I think. So our first guest today, everyone, is Lady Bella Colgrane, and Bella is the Lord Lieutenant for Kent, if you haven't met Bella before. So Bella, over to you.
Thank you, Josephine. Thank you. I'd really like to thank Josephine and everyone at the Kent Community Foundation for having organised this webinar today. And it's incredible that so many charities have actually signed up. I believe we've got about 120 different charities who will be joining us on this webinar. So that's fantastic. As Lord Lieutenant, one of my prime roles is to promote the King's Award for Voluntary Service. This is a wonderful role for me to do. The King's Award is the highest award given to volunteer groups across the UK for the outstanding work done in their local communities for the benefit of others. Last year was the first year that we had of the King's Awards for Voluntary Service, and I'm really proud that we had four outstanding charities in Kent that received the award. We do have an incredibly strong voluntary sector in Kent, and what I really want to make sure is that all our volunteers get the recognition that they deserve. I'm sure that there are many more out there that deserve to get that accolade. So we really need to get the awards better known and to get more nominations into the system. So that's what this webinar is about today. And I'm really grateful to Sir Martin Lewis for agreeing to come on this webinar today and to tell us a bit more about the King's Award. He is chair of the King's Award for Voluntary Service. His face is probably very familiar to those of you, perhaps those of us of a certain age, as he was a very well-known broadcaster over 20 plus years as a news anchor on both ITV and BBC. But he's also heavily involved with the charitable sector, and has both founded, advises, and is patron of numerous charities, particularly those supporting young people, hospices, and cancer research. I didn't probably say there are many, many more others as well. He's also chaired the National Council for Voluntary Organisations and was knighted for his services to voluntary services in 2016. So thank you, Martin. It's a huge privilege to have you here today, and thank you for giving us your time. And over to you.
Well, thanks very much indeed, and great privilege to be here as a person of a certain age, I may say, so representing all those of a certain age, and hopefully many who are much younger but are on their volunteering journey, as it were, which is a very important thing. I mean, I've long believed that the most important thing about volunteering is what you can do for your community. And I'd love to live in a world in which everyone wakes up every Sunday morning and says, what did I do for the community last week? And what am I going to be doing next week? Because then we would have reached a really perfect stage in terms of, if you like, democracy in action, people at the grassroots actually looking very hard at what their community needs and getting together with friends and neighbours to do it on a local basis. And the King's Award, it was the Queen's Award, of course, until the passing of Her Majesty, and the King very graciously agreed to take it on and pick it up, as it were. So it is now the King's Award, but it was started in 2002 on the occasion of the Golden Jubilee, and the Queen and her courtiers and her advisors actually looked very hard at the honour system And they decided that there was a very clear gap there because the honours were just for individuals. But what they wanted to do, and what they indeed established, was, as the Lord Lieutenant has just said, was an organisation which honours those people working in groups at grassroots community level to better their communities. And it is the equivalent of an MBE. It's part of the honours system. And it really is all about the grassroots level of our communities right across the country. Now, for these awards, a very, very high standard of excellence is required. And the important thing is, and I say this to you every time we have a meeting, with the lieutenancies or representatives of the lieutenancies, that you must not create the expectation that because you are nominated, you're going to get an award, because that actually doesn't happen. What we're looking for are organizations that are exceptional, absolutely exceptional. That's number one criteria. Number two, and this is so important, I can't emphasize it enough, it must be volunteer driven. There must be volunteers in the driving seat. Yes, you can have staff, because as organizations expand, they often need staff in order to more effectively achieve what they're trying to do. But you must be volunteer driven. As I say, volunteers in the driving seat, in control of the organization. And that, by the way, doesn't mean just trustees. If it's just trustees, who are, of course, all volunteers, then unless they're, the way I put it is, unless they're getting down and getting their knees dirty, as it were, that is, it won't be included. The fact that you're just trustees as volunteers. So we're looking for volunteers who are really at the grassroots of the community, who are operating, working to tackle issues or problems, have done so successfully for at least 3 years. So there is clear proof of what they're doing. And these awards are so special that they have their own day of announcement. They're not announced with the summer honours or with the New Year honours. They were announced on the anniversary of the Queen's coronation, the 2nd of June. They are now going to be announced. In fact, the first lot of the King's Award, as it were announced on the King's birthday, the 14th of November. So that is what we're aiming for. And there's quite a lengthy process that we all go through in order to achieve this. What the awards do is they give you, when they're announced, the winners get extensive local coverage. For some reason that I can never quite fathom, the national media don't really seem to pick it up. But that's not important, because the important thing is extensive local coverage, which helps with donations for the winning organizations, and it helps them in attracting more volunteers to their cause. And in order to, when you do a nomination, the organizations, it's unlike the real, not real, but the individual honours system. It's unlike that, because the people who are nominated for individual honours don't know that they are nominated. Whereas with us, with the King's Award, we look for nominations not from the organisation concerned, but from people who have actively benefited from or have observed the organisation in action and really admire what they are doing. Endorsement, yes, is important, and there's an opportunity for you to add endorsements to the nominations. But those nominations, and the endorsements are best coming from people who, as I say, have actively benefited from or observed the group in action, rather than, dare I say it, VIPs. So, what we tend to say is that, the local mayor and the local MP would be people you might normally go to for nominations. That's fine. By all means, do that. But, if you think about it, your local MP or your local mayor or some local dignitary, if you ask them to help with a nomination, they would, wouldn't they? We're looking for people who are actually really involved in the organization and can speak and write their endorsements from personal experience. So that basically is where we're coming from. We have the the stages are that we start off with nominations going through to a team at the DCMS in London, and they then sort of sort out those that are eligible, which are usually most of them, and those nominations are then sent back to the respective lieutenancies, the appropriate lieutenancies. And by the way, can I, in passing, just congratulate the Kent Lieutenancy, because you have been formidable in the work that you have put into encouraging volunteering in Kent. I think you're right at the top of the tree when it comes to all the lieutenancies around the country in terms of what you do to encourage volunteering. So huge congratulations on that. But all I would say is that once the nominations have been handed back to the lieutenancies, that's the point at which the Lord Lieutenant or the many deputy lieutenants, one of them will come and spend a morning or a day with you and talk to you, and they will then write their own additional endorsement, which will go to the end of the nomination, all of which will be considered by the team of 30 very carefully chosen people who have real expertise right across the voluntary sector in really all sections of the voluntary sector, and they then choose and decide on the winners, which are usually about 250 out of the, on average, 500 nominations that we have every year. So that's enough from me rabbiting on about the King's Award. Can I hand you back to, I think, is it Joe? Yep, Joe, you're going to take over and take us through. And of course, happy to answer any questions that you may have, in the course of the discussion.
Thank you very much, Sir Martin. And if you're happy to, will you stay on the webinar to answer questions at the end, if that's all right? Perfect.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you very much. So we now have 65 participants on the webinar and counting. So just to clarify some of the housekeeping around the webinar, if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A, which is at the bottom of the screen. So if you click onto your screen, at the bottom there is a Q&A. If you click into there, you can pose your question, and at the end of everyone speaking, we will go through those questions and we will do our very best to be as clear as possible in how we answer those. So just to remind you that you can do that. And just as Sir Martin was saying about the Lieutenancy Office supporting volunteers and encouraging volunteering across Kent, I just wanted to name check Beth Peel, who I know is on the webinar today, and Ashford Volunteer Centre, and in fact all of the volunteer centres across the county, who do a fantastic job in marrying up organisational needs with charities that are looking for support and volunteers who are looking to give something back to their communities. So just wanted to mention that and say that, right across the county, we do our very best to encourage volunteering to the sector. Now, I'm going to hand you over to Joe Holmes, who is going to tell you more about the timescales, and then we will talk more about the process. And then Bella, I thought maybe after we've done that, I could hand back to you to maybe talk about a couple of the winners that won this year, because I know that they have all received their awards and you did that recently. And I know you could briefly mention a couple of those so that people get a better sense of the types of organisations who tend to win or tend to be awarded a King's Award. So Joe, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Josephine. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for signing up today for this webinar. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a croaky voice, so I do apologise. Yes, obviously, in the Lord Lieutenant's initial speech to you, volunteering and supporting our charities and our volunteers is hugely important to the Lord Lieutenant and to the Lieutenancy as a whole. And it's a major part of what we do to support the residents in our county. So by getting involved, as we have done through Sir Martin and obviously through the KAVS team based in London, we're trying to really, really pull out all the stops and actually work as hard as we can to try and spread the message about this wonderful award and the benefits that it can bring charities. You know, the charities that we've seen, you know, that is life-changing, you know, having an award like this, having the emblem on their social media, their letterhead. I just cannot tell you how important it is. And it's a way in which the volunteers can be thanked publicly and have that big pat on the back that they all deserve, because we know what volunteers are like. They just want to get on doing what they do. They enjoy it. They want to help people. They don't want fuss. They don't want a fanfare. They just want to be, you know, doing what they do, which is fine. But equally, we as a lieutenancy want to see them get the recognition. So we're working really closely to try and generate more interest in this and sort of make people feel that there's no fear with going through the process. Yes, it's a form-filling process, and you know, but it's so worth going through the form and looking to see if this is something that you feel as an organisation it's for you. So what we want to do obviously today is sort of spur in some enthusiasm for people to sort of get involved and for people to contact us at the Lieutenancy. You know, as a local organisation, for want of a better word, you know, we are best placed to help you. We obviously have the King's Awards for voluntary service team in London, but of course they've got to serve the whole of the United Kingdom. So we've got our part to play. So we want to support them in supporting you to make sure that you can put yourselves forward and you can secure this win, because it is so incredibly changing for organisations. I just cannot tell you. So we are currently sort of in the process now of sort of starting up the new timeline to look at the 2025 nominations. So obviously the 2024 round has now closed, so we're waiting on the outcome of that, and I'm hoping that we'll see a nice list of Kent recipients, which is always good, because it then spurs on people to actually sort of put themselves forward. So we want some good results. So basically the timeline for the 2025 round will be from the 1st of September this year. The award process will open up, and it will be open from the 1st of September through to the 1st of December. So you've got a nice long running period, because normally it used to be June time that we would be opening up for nominations, but it's been sort of the whole timeline has changed. So you've got a good amount of time to start thinking about what you want to do as an organisation. Please, please, please look at the criteria on the KAVS website. It is hugely important, and it's very clear, and it sets out everything that you as an organisation would need to know if this is something for you. So please do look at that. As I say, once the nomination period closes in December, then of course all the scrutiny checks will be made by the KAVS team. And then in the autumn, sort of, or later on in the year, early 2025, the Lord Lieutenant will be asked to ask her deputy lieutenants to go along to the organisations that have been put forward, that have passed all the checks and have met all the criteria. And there will be assessments made by the deputy lieutenants. So, yeah, the lieutenancy has a huge role to play here. But I'd like to say that the biggest role to play is Jenny, who's sitting there very quietly, because Jenny is the friendly face that we're looking at today. And Jenny is the go-to person if anybody wants to ask anything about the KAVS. And believe me, no question is a silly question. So I'm going to hand over to Jenny just to sort of explain her role and that and how she is your go-to person in this whole process. So Jenny.
Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you for coming. I've probably been in touch with some of you already, because I know some of you already have our email address, but if you don't have it, it's going to be put in the chat. It's kavs@kent.gov.uk. If you have any queries after today, please get in touch, and we're here to help you through the process right from the start. So all of you are different organisations, so there might be things that don't come up today that you want to know more about, and we're here just to help you. So any questions at all, either ask today or email in, and we will help you and talk you through. And, you know, we've got lots of deputy lieutenants as well who can also help you. So please just get in touch and we'll chat to you about your group.
Jenny, could you just reiterate again what Jo was saying about the process? So someone who is listening in today and they think that's definitely we are an outstanding organisation. We definitely deliver excellence to the beneficiaries that we support. We definitely want to be considered for a King's Award. So what do they do next?
I would say the first thing to do is email me and Joe at the Lieutenancy, and then we can talk you through everything that Sir Martin's talked about today and explain the process. A lot of groups, because obviously, as Sir Martin said, you can't self-nominate, so we would assist you in explaining who would be best suited to put your group forward. As Sir Martin said, it has to be someone that knows your group and knows the fantastic work you're doing, so we can help you find someone. Also, they'll need 2 letters of support. So we can also assist in, saying who would be good people to write those letters of support. And then, as I say, we're there right from that initial process. So we will talk you through, help you get your nomination form. We're happy to look at your nomination forms and check that everything's included. And then once we then find out, as Joe said, once the nomination window has closed, and then the deputy lieutenants are asked to assess, then we are also there to help. So the deputy lieutenants, they assess groups every year, so they've done a lot of assessments for us, and they are a source of information. They are really supportive, because all of us in the lieutenancy are here to get our wonderful Kent groups the recognition they deserve. So we're just here to help you. But so we will talk you through all of that process and make it as simple as possible for you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Jenny. And then Bella, would you mind just telling us about some of the winners this year, 1 or 2 of the winners that we had this year, because I think that will really help to bring it to life for people, and they can think about whether they are that kind of organisation.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, this year there was a bit of a sort of general theme running through it. In previous years, we've had quite a wide range of different organisations that have won, whereas the 4 that won last year, 2 were actually community radio stations, and the other 2 organisations were both supporting both adults and, in one case, children with who were victims of domestic abuse. So the 2 community radios were Sittingbourne Community Radio and Academy FM in Thanet, both of whom ambushed me to go on one of their, on the programme there and then. But I am going back on Academy FM quite soon. They are the most incredible community radio stations. They kept everybody going during lockdown. They are all volunteers that run it, of all different ages. There was one young presenter who I'm horrified to find out had never heard of Eric Clapton when I was going through the kind of music that I liked. I don't know whether this is, I mean, there was, and I think it was at Academy FM. They keep in touch with their listeners. They have regular listeners who come in, and then they sort of name check if they haven't heard somebody for a while. They will put that name out there and say, "Are you listening? Are you okay? Do you need some help?" And if they don't come back, they will send somebody round. And there was even somebody who was actually in hospital and was desperate for a bit of support with personal matter, couldn't raise a nurse, so he rang the radio station and got the support that he needed. And that's the sort of, so it's absolutely embedded in the local community. They post, both of them, they post ideas of organisations that are looking for volunteers, job opportunities, training opportunities, social events that are going on. It's absolutely embedded in their local communities. So both of those were incredibly deserving. Child's Vision was started by, it's a very small organisation, so you really don't need to be a huge organisation with 60 volunteers or 100 volunteers, whatever. This has only got a handful of volunteers, but they are trained mentors who go into schools and they work with children who have either suffered or been witnesses to domestic abuse. And they have the most phenomenal impact on the young people that they're working with. At the other end of the scale, SATIDA is a very well-known organisation with dealing with domestic abuse in Kent. And they again have trained volunteers who will support people through their entire journey with recovery and resettlement if necessary, and so on. But I mean, in previous years, we've had environmental ones as well. There was the, I'm going to get it wrong. I always get the name wrong. Friends of Westbrook and Stonebridge Pond, which was a lovely organisation where they, in Faversham, where they've cleaned out the waterways running through the town and bringing wildlife back. It was wonderful to see, again, volunteers giving up their weekends in waders, pulling out weeds and doing everything they could to make their local community and local environment better for everybody. Then community organisations like Sheppey Matters, fantastic community hub on the Isle of Sheppey, obviously. And the Sea Cadets in Sheppey, they've also received it. And there are obviously Sea Cadet forces all over the UK. And therefore, in order to get the King's Award, or as it was then, the Queen's Award, they had to be absolutely exceptional. And this is something that comes up. We might have seen this with community radios. There are obviously community radios all over the UK, but there was something very, very special about Academy FM and Sittingbourne Community Radio for them to reach that high bar that Sir Martin has talked about. The Chatham Town Football Club, they also received the award back in 2022. Again, they work fantastic outreach programs in the community. So it's a lot more than just a football club, and they do a lot to foster good relations between some of the newer immigrant residents of the community. And there's no better way than to foster good relations, as long as it doesn't get too competitive, I suppose, than through sporting occasions. And the Hands of Hope, they also got it, which again is an environment. It has volunteers. They've completely restored an old walled garden where they grow produce that is used, and it's both a therapeutic environment for volunteers to come and help to come and work there. So that's just a snapshot of some of our previous award winners. Happy to answer any questions.
That's great, Bella. Thank you. That's perfect. And I think what you said about the size of the organisations, because also larger organisations can win too. So it's very much about operating at grassroots level. But we have had some larger organisations in the past who have armies of volunteers who work really hard to support their charities. And by doing that, really demonstrated their commitment to the people that they help. And so sometimes I get questions about, can larger organisations apply, or can organisations who may be part of our national remit but operating at a local level, can they apply? And the answer is yes, if they're doing something that is different or special or unique to the area that they live and work, or the beneficiaries that they support. So, initiative and creativity and new ideas, even if you're in a larger organisation, is also something to be recognised, and you can be nominated if you're in a slightly larger organisation too. And one of the questions, Jo, that I wanted to ask you was if there are people that are on the call who have been nominated before, but as Sir Martin said, you know, lots of people get nominated. Not everyone can win. But if you have gone through the process and you haven't quite got to the end point where you receive a King's Award, when can you be nominated again? How long do you have to wait before you can be nominated again?
Basically, you can't nominate within the 3 years, so you have to give it a 3-year gap. And if somebody has come sort of that close, it may well be worth sort of getting together with Jenny, myself, just to see if there were any areas there which maybe weren't quite as strong, which maybe could be expanded. There may have been areas perhaps that there wasn't enough evidence to sort of support a statement. Again, it's all about, it's like everything. You can put down what you do, but you need to have evidence to support what you're saying, like everything. So it may well be something wasn't quite connected. And in that regard, it's a case of us just sort of looking through, you know, with the group to see if there was something that actually, if it had been sort of tightened up a little bit more, it might just have got over that sort of hurdle. So what I want to say really is in that regard is don't lose heart, because all is not lost because you haven't, you know, secured it. You know, to have got through the process of actually getting in the mix with hundreds of thousands of organisations and just being pipped at the post, it doesn't mean to say by any stretch that there's any fail anywhere. It's just that, you know, something may have come along that was a little bit stronger, may have been a bit more creative, and may have got the right wording down. And it's things like that sometimes that it can be as simple as that. So what we don't want to do is anybody to lose heart, because it's not about us or anybody sort of penalising them. That's not what it's about. It's we want to get the best from those organisations, but we also want to help those organisations get that information. So it's all about what we can do to help the organisation. So yeah, but definitely 3 years, and anything after 3 years, then certainly you can reapply. So yeah.
Thank you, Jo. So Martin, there are a couple of questions in the chat, and you did touch upon these when you were doing your introduction. So maybe we could just reiterate what we were saying. So question around you know, organisations who have paid staff and volunteers. They're not all not everyone in the organisation is a volunteer, and you did mention that. So maybe you just want to reiterate what you meant there and just clarify that.
Sure. It is perfectly possible for an organisation with, you know, 20 staff, 25 staff, and maybe 150, 200 volunteers. You can still apply. The key criteria is that volunteers must be in the driving seat. And we have turned down some really worthwhile organisations because it was apparent from the nomination form that the person really in control was the paid chief executive or the paid staff. And we need absolute proof that it is volunteers that are in the driving seat and that the paid staff are working to the direction of the volunteers. And that, of course, is easiest if volunteers have formed an organisation. They've got together with friends or neighbours to tackle, you know, an issue or a problem in their local community. And then as you grow and expand and become more and more successful, it's perfectly understandable that you would want to bring on some paid staff, particularly if you're successful in raising funds locally to enhance and improve the work that you do. That's fine, but the volunteers must stay in the driving seat for these particular, you know, it's the key criteria of the King's Award. Now, it's just gone from being the Queen's Award to the King's Award, and it doesn't mean to say that the King won't want to change that at some point in the future. We don't know, but for the moment, we are working with the criteria that were established and which proved to be very effective over the 20-odd years that it was the Queen's Award. And you can be the greatest organisation in the community, doing the most fantastic piece of work, but because the volunteers are not in the driving seat, you would not win a King's Award for voluntary service. And can I just to pick up on what you were saying, Jo, about local branches of national organizations. Now, I think the Lord Lieutenant mentioned the Sea Cadets, who were clearly exceptional. What we say is that that exceptionality has to mean that you are doing something over and above the template handed down by your national organization. I'll give you a quick example. We gave an award some years back to a scout troop who had rented for a peppercorn rent an old building that wasn't being used. They spent 2 years renovating that building themselves as volunteers and doing all the work, the plastering, everything. And then when they'd done that, they let that building out to different people and organizations in the community, from Macmillan and Parkinson's Disease Society, and they even had social services in there. So what their aim was to provide a one-stop shop for people encountering all kinds of difficulty with their lives and within their families. Now that is something that is, there's nothing that says that Scouts should do that. But that was just something that they decided to do as a project to take on. And it was the nature of that project that just blew the judges away. Yep. So very happy to take any other questions that anybody's got.
And so Martin, the other question that someone was asking in the chat, and you did touch upon this at the beginning as well, was can you ask a local MP to nominate? And I'll let you repeat what you said at the beginning of the chat.
Well, if you ask the local MP to nominate, of course he'll say yes, and he or she would say yes, and they would, wouldn't they? I mean, they're not, as a local MP, they're not going to turn down any charity that says, or any organization that says, will you nominate me for the great work that I'm doing? I think what we're much more interested in is having nominations and endorsements, by the way, from people who actually are involved with the organization, i.e. as beneficiaries, or they're people who have looked at that organization, have liked what they saw, and have maybe decided to back it, and are a donor to that organization. Or they may just watch this group in operation from a distance. Perhaps they benefited a relative or a friend in some way, and they thought, well, that's really special. I'd like to nominate them. And then, of course, unlike the main honour system, the organisation itself knows when it has been nominated, and that's when the lieutenancies kick into action, and the Lord Lieutenant and the DLs, will come around and spend time with you, and they will then submit their judgment of the organisation, which is added to the nomination and considered by the national judges.
Lovely, thank you very much. Amy, I know that you have been monitoring the Q&A box. Is there other questions in there that people are asking that we haven't addressed yet?
Hi there, Josephine. Just sticking to the nomination theme, you may have covered this already, but would you mind reiterating, does it have to be more than one nomination, or is there a minimum number of nominations? That's just one of the questions that's come up.
Yeah, no, I mean, there can be just one nominator. And, it's very straightforward, but the actual nominator, apart from the caveats that I just mentioned, the actual nominator is not the main thing that we look at. We actually look at the content of what the organization, what the group are actually doing, and it's the evidence for that and the volunteer-driven nature and the exceptionality of it, which the judges look at. Who the nominator is. I mean, of course, it helps, to have someone who's closely involved with the organisation or has seen them, has seen them in action. But at the end of the day, as long as the nominator is a responsible person in the community, that's all we ask for.
Thank you very much. Amy, do you have any other questions on there?
Just two more. I think you've just answered this, Sir Martin, but someone has asked, would it be appropriate for service users who now volunteer to nominate them?
That's a very good question, and we have looked at that in some detail. What you're talking about is someone who benefits from a service and maybe is still benefiting from the service and have themselves become a volunteer. I think that it's quite interesting. It'd be better for them not to nominate if they're involved with the organization. They could be perhaps someone who endorses and they say, I'm involved with they admit that they're involved with the organization as a volunteer. But generally, if they're still involved with the organ, well, obviously we need testimony from people who are involved with the organization. And I suppose it might help if someone said, look, this organization helped me in so many ways, this, and this, and I like them so much and appreciated the work that they've done so much that I become a volunteer there myself. I think that would be a tick in the box for them, actually. I really do.
Thank you very much. Amy, any more questions? Amy, any more questions from?
She's muted.
Sorry. There is a question. It says, as a small Kent-based charity, our beneficiaries and contacts are from all over the UK. Is it okay to have letters of support from some of their non-Kent contacts, or is it better to have them all from within Kent?
This is an interesting area because I mean, we tend to look for evidence within the lieutenancy itself, and people, I mean, if people have benefited and they're in different parts of the country, then that's fine. But you have to be very careful here because there are some organizations that start off in one lieutenancy and then they expand and they go into the neighboring lieutenancy, and we try not to exclude them because they have done so well that they've expanded. But if they expand to the point that they become a national charity, then I'm sorry, the answer is no. I mean, every 10 years, in fact, we had the last SEF Awards last year when we invited 20 national charities to apply for what was then the Queen's Award. We had the Scouts and the Red Cross and and others that picked up the award, which was a national award. But this is specifically for grassroots local charities. We don't want to penalize organizations that started off as a local charity and then have become more and more successful. But there comes a point where they are of a size and they're operating in so many different bases around the UK that they are clearly a national charity. And we have excluded some organizations because of them being national, clearly being national charities. So you have to be careful how you write. I know we did give an award. There was one charity which, in fact, there are several charities which were part of a national organization, but we made it very plain when we gave the award that it was for a specific group of volunteers in a specific town and the work that they had done. I think it was to do with volunteers helping to monitor Coast Guard coastal paths and so on, something like that. But we it's quite interesting. You won't believe the number of discussions that take place on the part of the national judges, and we're very keen to give organisations an opportunity, if they are small and expanding, to be considered. But you have to be very careful how you write the nomination because it is mainly for local. And I know one or two organisations proudly said we're now national. We started here and we're now national. Well, you're a national organisation. That counts against you. We'd much rather you just talked about what you've done locally and give the award for that.
Thank you very much. Amy, any more questions? I have a couple of questions in the chat as well, which I can address, but is there any other questions in the Q&A?
No, that's all from the Q&A, thanks.
Thank you very much. So one question, maybe Joe or Jenny can answer this question and give St Martin's throat a rest. Can you apply if you're a community interest company? So a CIC in our world.
Yes, you can.
Oh,
yes,
you can. So I didn't know that. I always just assumed it was local groups and charities. I didn't realize like a social business could also be nominated for the King's Award. Yeah. And it's still under this category. It's not under the enterprise category.
No.
Perfect. Okay.
Can I just add that we have given awards to some CICs, but some would disqualify if they are driven by the chief executive, a paid chief executive. You know, I think it is really. I mean, if you look at social enterprises, for example, there is a Points of Light award in Downing Street, which Downing Street occasionally, you know, give out awards specifically to social enterprises. And CICs would fall into that category sometimes. So where we have a CIC that touches all the bases, still driven by volunteers, then of course they will qualify for consideration. But if not, then we very often refer them across to Downing Street. And by the way, one other thing I can say is that we have quite often during the last judging sessions just finished. We had nine sessions, you know, going through things over the last three. So going through the 500 nominations over the last few weeks, and there is no doubt that we have sometimes when we give an award or when we decide not to give an award, that we will note that there is someone who, as part of the nomination, is clearly a driving force as an individual behind it. And what we will then do is, as a committee, we will refer that person back to the appropriate lieutenancy to see if the Lord Lieutenant wants to consider putting them forward for an individual honour. So I just thought I'd mention that because it hasn't come up before.
No, that's really good. Bella, did you want to say something there?
Well, I just noticed in the chat that I'd obviously confused some people where I was talking about the job opportunities on community radio. What I meant by that was not that they were advertising for jobs with the radio, but they were advertising opportunities that were available in the local town or the local region, so that people who are unemployed and listening in might think about applying for those job vacancies. So it's operating as a job centre, if you like, as well as entertaining people.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And just going back to the whole CIC or community interest company space, what I tend to find very impressive is the number of local community shops now that exist. So people in the local community have got together, and they are all volunteers, and they have chosen to, you know, resurrect their community shop because it has closed often during the pandemic. And so I think there is a growing market of volunteer-driven CICs that definitely would be eligible. And I've heard some of the stories, and some of them are absolutely fantastic in the work that they do. So so if you are involved in a community shop, can definitely think about applying because I think the work that you do is wonderful. Jenny?
I was just going to go back to what Sir Martin just said about the individual honours nomination. And I was just going to say, if anyone listening today has listened to this and thought, oh, our group might not be eligible due to the fact that we're not volunteer-led, but if you do have some outstanding volunteers and you'd like to know more about the national honours, please, again, email on our email address and we can talk you through that process as well. And there's also, you can nominate people to attend like a royal garden party at Buckingham Palace. So there's lots of different ways that you could get recognition. So please just get in touch, even if you're not sure where you would fit.
That's great, Jenny. And just to remind everyone, if you go into the chat, you can see both email addresses. So the address for the Kent Lieutenancy, and as Jo was saying earlier, they are the font of all knowledge when it comes to voluntary sector in Kent and how the process works, and giving you guidance on who is great to nominate. And also, Jenny, in previous conversations we've talked about the importance of the supporting letters, because those supporting letters is what really provides the evidence for what is in the original applications, and the nominators from the original applications. And I think so for people, for anyone listening, those supporting letters are really the key to demonstrating and providing the evidence of the impact that you have as organisations. And if your beneficiaries are able to do those supporting letters, then all the better. That's exactly the sorts of people. That's right, Jenny. Is that right? I haven't got that
Yeah,
wrong.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Jenny does tell me that she reads every single one of them and does cry. So so they're very committed to this process, and they're very committed to helping you as charities to put your very best foot forward, so that Kent can have, you never know, more than 4 winners for next year. So that's what we're hoping for. Great applications, great supporting letters, and more awards in Kent. So could I leave the final, or Amy, is there one final question that's not been answered on the Q&A? Anything in there?
Hi there. There are just a couple of queries, but they're for Joe and Jenny, so I've suggested that they email them directly.
Oh,
okay.
Perfect. That's great. So in the last few minutes, can I pass over to Bella first, and then Sir Martin for the final words?
Thank you. Well, I hope you find that as informative and interesting, and that we're going to get some fantastic nominations in as a result. Thank you, Josephine, for organising this, and thank you, Martin, for taking the time. You're doing a fantastic job with the up there in the central organisation. It must be so difficult going through hundreds and hundreds of applications, all of whom probably fit the criteria in one way or another, and trying to decide, which ones are absolutely exceptional. So thank you for all that you do.
Well, Bella, thank you, and thank everyone in the lieutenancy and everyone involved in volunteering in Kent. And I have to say, going through the nominations, I can't begin to tell you how inspiring it is. And there's a lot of negative news floating around in the media these days. Reading, you would not believe the wonderful work that is going on at grassroots level in communities the length and breadth of this country, and the nominations paint, and the winners, they paint a totally different picture of what is happening in this country to the often gloom-laden stuff that you get in the media. And I've been saying for many years, I've actually said this in a speech in one of the rooms in Parliament, that for me, we're going through now, we're starting the great exercise in democracy, which is electing MPs once every 5 years. And the British Parliament is the example that has been taken around the world and adapted for many, many other countries. And we tend to think of that as being on democracy. For me, real democracy is people like all of you involved in this in this webinar, actually identifying issues and problems in your local community and getting together with friends and neighbours and other volunteers to do something about it. That is, for me, is the backbone of democracy in this country. So, keep up the great work, because it is truly, truly fantastic what you do, and let the nominations flow.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you.
We should all be proud of what you're all doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who's joined the webinar, and lots of notes of gratitude to the Lieutenancy Office, to Bella, and to Sir Martin. So thank you. And please do get in contact with the Lieutenancy Office, because I'm sure this will probably have generated lots more questions that people want to ask, and that's great. But the team, Jenny and Joe, are here to help. So please don't hesitate, don't be shy, and do get in contact with the team. So once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you all to the panelists. I'm glad tech stayed connected. It's always my biggest concern. So that's good. Great. And thank you again, everyone, so much, and have a great rest of the day.